Hey guys, welcome to Forum Training. Glad you're with us this morning. Just a couple thoughts for you regarding the fruit of the Spirit that we've been applying. You may remember that how important this is as we engage in living out these ideas with one another. Very rarely do a set of words give you the opportunity to kind of evaluate your own relationships with others. And whenever there's a conflict, it's always great to just stop and say, how am I doing on these 9 words? Right out of Galatians 5:22 and 23. We've been talking about the fact that in those relationships we need love, we need joy, and we need peace. But today's words are really helpful, and they kind of work in a pair as well. The first word is the word patience. There's a couple of Greek words that translate that. We'll talk about that in a second. And the second word is the word kindness. And you might notice that patience and kindness work together. Patience has to do with how I'm remaining in the situation, but kindness has to do with being kind not only momentarily, but for an extended period of time. So let's take a look at those two words together. Patience is your willingness to remain under difficulty. And we've defined that earlier with James chapter 1, verse 4, where we read, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet all trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." Steadfastness is the Greek word hupomene. It means to mene, to stand, hupa, under, to stand under. And that's why we define patience as your willingness to remain under the difficulty. But that's only one word that's used for patience. The other word is the word macrothumia, and you find it in other locations, like later in the book of James, in James chapter 5, it says, verse 7, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits upon the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until he receives the early and the late rains." This is the word that kind of has the idea of a marathon. It's a longer period of time. It's not just staying under the pressure, but it's being willing to wait. And we find it there regarding the farmer. He has to wait on certain things, and he has to wait on those certain things from the Lord. But a little later, we find it when we read, "And do not grumble against one another." Later it says, "As an example of suffering and patience, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord." So they said some things, and then they waited, and often they were mistreated. And yet, in spite of all of that, they remained patient. And then it goes on to say, using both of these words together, "You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord. Now the Lord is compassionate and merciful." So here you have it. When we are patient, we're willing to remain under the difficulty. When we are steadfast as well, that's this idea that we can stay under the difficulty. But when we're patient, we're willing to wait even on the Lord and not question him. You'll notice here, "For the Lord is compassionate and merciful." I don't know about you, but one of the things that we need in all of our relationships is a willingness to be patient. And that takes time. And so what you're going to find out is that often that's the element. If you're finding that you're saying, "I've had enough," or you use words like, "I'm not taking any of this anymore," then you're realizing that you're not exercising patience in your relationships. And that's going to be transferable. You're going to find that if you're patient at home, you'll be able to be more patient at work. And if you're patient at work, you'll be able to find that you'll be more patient at home. Just remember this: staying under the difficulty, hupomene, and then macrothumia, to stay under the difficulty for a very long time. And that's why one of the words that King James used to use to describe patience was the word long-suffering, being willing to be in a difficult time for a very long period of time. It's a great quality for marriages and all our relationships to have. Here's your second word this morning to think about: kindness. Kindness is your purposefully tender spirit with the undeserving. And Romans tells us that it is the kindness of the Lord that brings us to repentance. That's a great word. In fact, you see the word patience in the same verse in Romans chapter 2, verse 4. "Or do you presume on the riches of the kindness and the forbearance and patience, not knowing that God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance?" So that's a great reminder Patience and kindness kind of work together. Here's a couple ideas about kindness. Kindness is this purposefully tender spirit. And one of the ways that can show up is in our tone and in the content of our speech. In fact, Mother Teresa once said, kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are fully endless. So here's the idea. Concentrate on being kind. Do you sound abrupt? Do you sound impatient? Or are you using words of kindness? One of the things I found out in coaching kids athletics is that when I'm coaching, I can tend to be less kind with my kids than I can with the other kids. And I've had a chance to see that in some of the other parents as well, that sometimes with our own children, we lack patience and kindness. So with those closest to us, this quality must be even more exercised. Here's a second idea. Kindness is communicated through the unexpected and perhaps undeserving actions of what we do. Amelia Earhart once said, no kind action ever stops with itself. One kind action leads to another. And good example is followed. A single act of kindness throws out roots in all directions, and the roots spring up and make new trees. The greatest work that kindness does to others is that it makes them kind themselves. A great idea. When we're actually being kind, we'll see that those around us also have a tendency to be more kind, and that's often unexpected. If you're kind to someone else, you might find that over time, they're going to be kind in return. And one of the other things that you notice about kindness in Romans chapter 2 is that we were not deserving of the Lord's kindness. Kindness is often given to those who are undeserving. And finally, this last thought for you. Kindness is best practiced without procrastination. One of the things you want to do is don't assume that you'll always have the same opportunity to be kind. William Penn said, if there is any kindness I can show, or any good thing I can do to any fellow being, let me do it, and not detour or neglect it, as I shall not pass this way again. Not every opportunity you have to be kind is going to return in the same way. So I'd encourage you this week, think in terms of patience, that is, being willing to suffer, even for a long time, and stay under the difficulty without rejecting it. And think in terms of kindness, that is my speech kind? Am I looking to give to the undeserving in kindness? And finally, am I taking advantage of those kind acts today? Think about those two words in light of your relationships. Have a great morning. God bless you as you continue in your 4M training.